Welcome everybody to this joint presentation with the University of Warwick, University of York, and the University of Nottingham. We are joined here today by my colleagues, Tom Parker, Emma Winter, and Grace Dickinson, one from each university, and I'll just go on to talk about who they are. I am Saima Asghar Riaz. I'm the CEO of STEPS, and I'm a TESOL. I have a TESOL degree from the University of Warwick, and I have over 20 years of experience in UK admissions, guidance counseling, mentoring, language teaching, teacher training, soft skills development for students and professionals in Pakistan and the UAE. I'm joined by Emma Winter from the University of Nottingham, who's the International Recruitment Manager at Nottingham for the last 3 years. And she's responsible for managing student recruitment for South Asia, which includes India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. She has over 7 years experience in higher education admissions, making decisions on entry and reading lots of personal statements. So Emma will start off the workshop, and then she will be followed by another section of the workshop will be presented by Grace Dickinson, who is the Regional Manager for South Asia at the University of York. She joined the team in July 2019 and supports students applying from South Asia to the University of York. Since graduating in 2016, Grace has worked in UK higher education, working in widening participation and UK and EU recruitment at the University of Cambridge. Before joining the international team at York, Grace specialized in postgraduate recruitment, organizing the Cambridge Postgraduate Open Day, and producing the postgraduate study at Cambridge Guide. She completed her Modern and Medieval Languages BA Honours at Cambridge University. Tom Parker will end the presentation with some interactive activities. Tom is an international officer at the University of Warwick, and he has responsibility for student recruitment from Pakistan and the Middle East and North Africa region. He has previously managed Warwick's recruitment activities in East Asia and in Latin America. So after the three, it is one presentation presented jointly by all three colleagues, and after the presentation, we will open for question and answers. So over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Saima. Hi, everyone. My name's Emma, as Saima mentioned, from the University of Nottingham. Thank you for joining us this evening. So I'll just wait for our first slide to come up, and I'll talk to you a little bit about us as a group of universities. So the University of Nottingham, Warwick, and York are all part of the Russell Group universities. And I wanted to give you a bit of background into what the Russell Group is and why it's important, especially when you're writing a personal statement. Sorry, one moment. So the origins of the Russell Group go back to 1994, where the original members set out to ensure that their interests were represented to the governments. This interest of a widespread number of universities. We kind of had the idea that safety in numbers was the best way to approach our governments. And the heads of these universities would informally meet in a hotel called Hotel Russell in London, and that's where the name the Russell Group comes from. So an interesting fact that you can learn from today. So we now have about 24 members as part of the Russell Group. And as universities, we're world class. So we're research intensive universities, producing more than 2/3 of the world's leading research here in the UK. And it's the very best of the research as well, an outstanding teaching and learning experience. It's unrivaled links with local and national businesses in both the public and private sectors. So Russell Group's universities have huge social and economic and cultural impacts locally and across the UK and around the globe. And it's this impact and the research that we undertake that makes us highly sought after as institutions. So for example, if you're wanting to study medicine at the University of Nottingham as an international student, we normally have a restriction on about 20 places, but we receive around 2,500 applications from our international students. So how are you going to make yourself stand out, and how are you going to make yourself be seen as someone that we would want at one of our institutions? And the main way you can do that outside of your grades and your reference is your personal statement. And it's really your opportunity to give your own voice to your story and let us know kind of why you want to study this particular subject that you're looking to study as well. So in order to start off, we thought we'd give you all a bit of a quick quiz and see what you already know about personal statements and test your knowledge a little bit. So if you can find the Zoom chat box and get ready to answer some questions in there, I'll get going. So our first question then. Okay, so nice easy one to start. Hopefully quite a few of you might already know this. How many personal statements can you submit as part of your UCAS application? So do you think it's only one for all 5, one for each of your 5 choices, or 2, but only if you're applying for a joint honours course? So that's A, B, or C. So you can take a while to have a think and place it in the chat. So lots of A's coming in. Fantastic. Great, so I'll reveal it is A. If we can have our next slide, please. So yeah, so it's only one for all 5 choices. So it's really, really important to remember that the personal statement that you write is going to all 5 of your universities. So you need to be careful in terms of, you shouldn't reference a specific university. And if you're applying maybe for slightly different types of courses or different subject areas, then you need to make sure that your personal statement is broad and fits that remit as well. So next question. So it's a really good question. Universities might make your application unsuccessful based upon your personal statement, so just your personal statement. Is that true or false, do you think? So you can either put A or B, or true or false in the answer. So lots of people saying A, a few people saying B. I'll give you a couple more minutes to think about it. So could we reject your whole application just on your personal statement? Okay, and I'll reveal the answer now. So it is true. So as I mentioned in the beginning, your personal statement is extremely important in kind of showing us why you want to study at any university. And if your personal statement doesn't really fit well with the institution or why you want to come to a particular institution, then we can reject you just based on that application. Similarly, as I said, if it's a really competitive course, then that might be the only differentiating factor between you and another applicant if you've got the same grades. So it would come down to the personal statement when we're assessing your application. Okay, so our next question. What do you think the maximum number of characters you can use within the personal statement is? So is it A, 4,000 characters, B, 4,500 characters, or C, 5,000 characters? So lots of A's coming in, a couple of B's, lots more A's. Give you a couple more seconds to get some answers in. Okay, and I'll get Saima to reveal the answer. So it is in fact A, so lots of you got that right, well done. So 4,000 characters. So that is a very small space to write everything that you want to write about. And obviously you can't cover everything that you've done in that space as well. So it's very useful to kind of know that that's your limit in terms of planning your personal statement. And Grace will give you some tips on how to do that shortly. So how many tweets do we think that's equivalent to? So a bit of a maths question there. Do we think it's A, 21.75 tweets, B, 14.25 tweets, or C, 18.5 tweets? So a few B's coming through. A couple of A's, a couple of C's. And we'll reveal the answer. So it is B, 14.25 tweets. So obviously don't tweet your personal statement to us, but it's kind of a good guide to know. Again, not a very big space to kind of get everything that you want to say. So it's important to be selective with what you're putting forward and what you're sort of showcasing to us. Okay, so our next question. So when you're writing your personal statement, how much of your personal statement do you think should focus on academic content? So do you think it's A, 70%, B, 80%, or C, 90%? So how much do you think should be academic and how much do you think should be focusing on sort of more the personal experience? So we've got lots of A's coming in. I'll give you a couple more seconds and then we'll reveal the answer. Okay, so lots of A's, so I'll reveal the answer now. So it's in fact B, so it's 80%, so slightly more than some of you were guessing. A few people got that right, so well done if you got that right. It is 80% of your personal statement should be academically focused. So next question. So how much do you think your similarity needs to be in order for your statement to be flagged as being plagiarized? So do you think it's 20% similarity to another statement, A, or do you think it's 15% similarity to another statement, B, or do you think it's 10% similarity into another statement, C? So have a think. So if we were to see your personal statement and see that there are similarities, how much would it need to be similar to another personal statement for us to worry about it and flag it as potentially plagiarized? So lots of C's coming in, a few B's, a couple more seconds, a couple more B's coming in. So I'll reveal the answer now. So it is C, so it's 10% similarity to another statement. And I'll just quickly highlight to you what UCAS does with your statement and how we can see how a statement's been plagiarized. We'll just go on to the next slide. This is just an example of copycatch, which UCAS uses in order to see if your statement's been plagiarized or not. So we've got the sentence at the top here. So if it was highlighted in red on copycatch, UCAS will know that the sentence is identical to another one in their personal statement library, and it's an exact match. Another example is the same sentence but below with a few additions. So instead of the top sentence, it's been amended to "I grew up in a town near the sea and I've always found marine life fascinating." So here it shows you that the sentence would have still been picked up by copycatch. What would have been highlighted are the words that have been changed. And then also underlined would be a word that is changed, but also similar enough to maybe cause concern. So what happens is these statements are all flagged on your personal statement, and then someone from UCAS will read through your statement and decide whether or not the sentences are similar enough to the copycatch examples that's been highlighted to us. If it is shown as enough, then it would then be highlighted to an institution and university. So if it goes into that 10% as well, and then it will be the university's decision on what they wanted to do with your application and whether they wanted to just completely reject your application based on those similarities. So again, really, really important to make sure that you're using your own material for your personal statement. So next question. So what do we think is the most common way to open a personal statement? So we read lots of personal statements at our university, but what do you think is the most common way that lots of people start it? So is it A, I'm applying to this course because, B, from a young age I've always been, C, for as long as I can remember I have. So what do we think? So lots of B's, a couple of A's coming in. Some good guesses here. Yeah, lots of A's and B's. I'll give it a couple more seconds. I'll get Saima to reveal the answer now. It's B, so from a young age I've been. So again, really useful to remember to try and keep your personal statement different from the kind of vast majority that we're receiving, and try and be a bit original with what you're writing as well. Okay, so next. Okay, and last question now. So to really impress admission tutors, what do you think you should be doing in your personal statement? What's the key to your personal statement? So to demonstrate your skills and abilities and passion for the subject area, provide them with a list of every single achievement outside and inside your school or college, or C, a list of all the academic publications you have read. So I think this one's quite a nice, easy one. So lots and lots of A's. That's good to see. I'll get Saima to reveal the answer now. So yeah, it is in fact A. So demonstrate your skills, abilities and passion for the subject area, and that's the most important. And that leads me nicely on to my colleague Grace, who's going to talk a bit more how you can do that in your personal statement.
Brilliant, thank you, Emma, and really enjoyed the quiz. I really liked the question around the tweets and the equivalence there, but I'm really happy I didn't have to answer that because I'd have absolutely no clue because I don't use Twitter. But thank you for that. So I'm Grace, I'm the Regional Manager for South Asia at the University of York, and I'd like to talk to you a bit about how to get started really, and how to get off the starting blocks with your personal statement. And that can seem like a really daunting thing to do. Saima, could you click the slide, please? So how to get off the starting block with your personal statement? Well, where do you think it starts? It starts with your research. So next slide, please. And when I'm talking about it starting with your research, what I mean is that before you even begin writing and drafting your personal statement, it's important to do your course research, because by understanding and doing your course research and what you'd like to study at university, that will really help you in terms of drafting and actually producing a personal statement that demonstrates your clear motivations for the course. And that's really what we want to look at. So do your research. It's important to take your time when you're looking at different universities that you might want to study at, and research on the courses themselves will help you in terms of managing your thoughts when you come to write your personal statement. Because a course, for instance, in English at one university might be quite different to a course in English literature at another university. So look beyond the course title when you're doing your research and look at what you'd actually be studying. And then that will really help you narrow down the 5 universities you would like to choose and apply to when you come to write your personal statement and your UCAS application. On work experience, often this is a question that we're asked: do you need to have work experience demonstrated in your personal statement? The short answer is no, it's not something that you have to have, absolutely. But if you are applying for more vocational courses, such as medicine, law, social work, or nursing, then it can be really helpful to demonstrate that you've done some voluntary experience or had some work experience. And that is something that will help enhance your personal statement. So for the majority of subjects, you don't need to have that evidenced in your personal statement. But if you are applying for a more vocational subject, then work experience or voluntary experience can be a really key way of demonstrating that you have the personal skills and attributes that make you a suitable candidate for the course. And then the final point on this slide is it helps you yourself highlight your own priorities. What sort of subject you want to do and what you want to learn within that subject, how you learn within that subject. So some universities might have a lot of their teaching and assessment based on final year exams. Other universities might have more coursework and assessment content throughout the year. So play to your own strengths and do that within your research. So when you come to narrow down your university choices and as you come to write your personal statement, you have a good idea of how your subject interests really links to the specific courses that you're applying to. So next slide, please. Why are personal statements crucial? Well, we've just learned, obviously, from the quiz that, a university can reject you and not make you an offer based on your personal statement. But ultimately, a personal statement is so that the university can gain an understanding of who you are beyond your grades, beyond your predicted grades. This is the opportunity really for you to demonstrate that key subject interest. And in most cases, a decision to offer is based on the UCAS application itself. There are some exceptions to this depending on the subject that you're applying for, where you might have to be invited to an interview or undertake some form of admissions test. But the personal statement really is that core part of your UCAS application where a university can see your genuine passion for the subject. And it's also the part of the application that you directly can affect, and it's an opportunity for you to stand out. So it's important for you to have the tools available to make the most of that opportunity. So what are we looking for in short? Firstly, we're looking for a clear understanding of the course you've applied for and a genuine passion for it. And this is where it really ties back to having done that course research before you even come down to sit and write your first draft of your personal statement. So we want to understand that you have actually thought about the course that you're applying for and thought about how your own experiences, both within your schoolwork and what you might have done outside of school, demonstrate that you are really passionate and interested in that subject. So we want to understand your motivations and reasons for taking the course beyond, I am passionate about medicine. Tell us why you're passionate about medicine. We want to really understand that you've and see that you can demonstrate that you've thought about your reasons for studying that subject. And at least half of the content should be focused on academic, social, or cultural interests related to the course. And as we mentioned, it should really be around 80% that is focused entirely on the subject that you're applying for. And I think the key thing from that last point is that it needs to be related to the course that you're applying for. So make those links, and make those links clear as you write your personal statement. So for the personal statement, just from a practical standpoint, it's a maximum of around 4,000 characters in length, which really doesn't seem like that much. It's only about 14 or so tweets. But it's important when you're drafting out this personal statement that you keep it sort of clear and focused, and almost approach it as if you were writing a school essay or a piece of school written work. So you should really have, before you even start writing, you need to plan your personal statement. Be honest in what you say. Don't tell us you've read the entire works of Shakespeare if you've only picked up Romeo and Juliet, because that could be quite embarrassing, particularly if you are invited to an interview for a subject that you're applying for. We do read your personal statement. It should have a clear layout and development of ideas. So it should be well written. So do obviously reread your drafts and get someone else to read your drafts as well, because often when you're drafting and redrafting a piece of work, it can be quite easy to miss some of those simple errors in punctuation and grammar. Your voice should be clear and concise, and ultimately the personal statement is your opportunity to showcase your own voice. It should have clear formatting, so you can start new paragraphs and leave spaces, and that should give you around 500 words to play with. You don't need to start with a quotation or with a statement. That doesn't make you necessarily sound more intelligent than if you didn't do that. We want to hear your voice. So your personal statement should really demonstrate that you have fully researched your course before you apply and come to write your personal statement. As you would for an essay or piece of coursework. Sorry, can we go back to that slide, please? Thank you. So as you would for an essay or piece of coursework, do make a plan, and make a plan of your paragraphs so you know that the points you want to make in each of those sections. As I've just mentioned there, you don't need to start with a statement or quotation unless it really has some relevance in your personal statement. So if it sort of links to a book that you've read that demonstrates that subject interest in the subject you're applying for, then by all means include that. But it would be such a shame for you to waste, say, 10 words of 500 to showcase something that someone else said 100 years ago. We want to hear what you have to say. And it also can be a really good exercise in developing the skills that will be really helpful for you in the future when you come to write job applications, because this is exactly the sort of skills and the way in which you'd prepare an application that you will have to input into your personal statement. So what do you need to include? Firstly, you need to tell us why you want to study the course. That is ultimately key. So what interests you about the course? It's absolutely fine for you to say that you're interested and enthusiastic about the subject, but you have to explain why. Just telling us, I want to study law, I'm passionate about law, doesn't really tell us a great deal. What have you done that demonstrates that subject interest? This is an opportunity for you to develop those ideas and showcase that you've done your research. Maybe you've participated in a mock trial competition. Maybe you've read some articles, or you're following something in the news about a certain legal case. Tell us about that, and tell us about how this has developed your thoughts about why you want to study that subject. You can also tell us why you think you'll do well in this subject. So why you think some of your personal attributes from some of your own experiences make you a suitable candidate. And essentially, all of the information is readily available online on the individual course pages on university websites. We tell you what we're looking for, so make sure you've read those course pages, and maybe keep some of those course pages open as you're drafting and redrafting your personal statement to keep your mind focused on what you need to include and showcase in that personal statement. And a top tip here is to talk about a specific area or topic within the subject. So you don't need to keep it too broad and general. So for instance, if we take the example of law, are you interested in civil law or law of tort or criminal law? Tell us about a specific subject or topic within that course that maybe you've read about or you've explored in your own time. That shows us you've done your research, and it also shows that you have a genuine commitment to the subject. So how to showcase why you're interested in the subject? It's not enough to just say, I am interested in X subject. You need to evidence it, and we need to see that evidence. And there can be a range of different activities that you can undertake to demonstrate that you are genuinely passionate about the subject you're applying for. You can start obviously with your school subjects. So think about some of the different topics you've been looking at within your schoolwork, particularly if you're applying for a subject that you haven't already studied at school, and this can be very common. So just to take the law example, not all schools offer a law A-level or equivalent subject. So think about the subjects you're currently studying and what skills you've developed from those subjects that can be linked to, say, the field of law or a particular course at university. So find those links between your school courses and the course you're applying for at university. Perhaps you've done some wider reading. Perhaps you've done a taster lecture through a university, or you've read some articles or watched a documentary. All of this experience is what I like to call and coin super curricular activity. So you probably do hobbies and interests in your spare time that's extracurricular, but what's really key in a personal statement is to demonstrate that super curricular activity. So this is stuff that you've done outside of your schoolwork that directly relates to the course that you're applying for. And it doesn't have to be any specific type of example. It could be reading, it could be watching a documentary, it could be a podcast you've listened to. There's lots of information out there that's readily available, and you've got plenty of time. If you're sat there thinking, I'm not really sure how to evidence my interest in this particular subject, then maybe now is a good time to start reading around the subject and exploring that subject within your own time, because that demonstrates independent thought and research, and that's what you'll be expected to do at university. And some universities as well can kind of help you with this in discovering new subjects. I'm sure the University of York is not alone here. I'm just giving this example. If you haven't heard of a MOOC, it is a massive open online course. And these are free to access courses where university academics have basically put together a bit of a taster for you to dip into a certain area of a particular subject. We have these at York. I'm sure other universities such as Nottingham and Warwick also have their own subject-specific resources online. So we're giving this to you, so utilize this opportunity and experience. Examples like free online courses or maybe attending a taster lecture. Talk about that in your personal statement, but don't just tell us you've done it. Tell us what you've learned from that experience and develop those ideas. That's what really helps make a competitive personal statement stand out. You can also tell us about your future plans. It's absolutely fine if you're not sure what you want to do after you've done your undergraduate degree. We're not testing you on that at all. But if you do have an idea, that can be something that you can mention in your personal statement, because it shows that you've thought about how the course that you want to study at university will help you achieve that future ambition and goal. So what do you want to achieve after completing the course? And how do you want to use the knowledge and skills gained from that course? And this is again where, looking at the course pages on the university websites, we tell you what sort of fields and careers students go into. So use that information as well, but also look at the modules that are available in the course that you're applying for, and how maybe certain modules or certain areas of the course will help you achieve those future goals. So if you're going to mention this, remember the key thing is to link it back to the course. Next slide, please. We've mentioned that about 80% should be specific to academic content and why you want to study the course. So you might be sat there wondering, what do I do with the last 20%? Do I leave it blank? Do I just talk about what I've done this week or at the weekend? No. Talk about your extracurricular activities, but keep it focused. Universities such as York, Nottingham and Warwick all want well-rounded students who are really going to engage in the university community. And I'm sure many of you are engaged in different hobbies and interests. So tell us about those. But don't just list what you've done. Tell us what skills you've developed and what personal attributes you have as a result of those interests. And again, the key thing, if you can do, is link it to the course. If you can't, that's absolutely fine. I was a little bit cheeky in my personal statement because I applied for French and I used to do ballet, so I kind of made the link there. You don't have to be as cheeky as that, but think about the personal skills that you're developing from those extracurricular activities. So if you're involved in a sport, tell us about how you've developed teamwork or communications or negotiation skills, whatever it might be, but keep it focused to those additional skills that you've gained. And think about how the skills from those extracurricular activities maybe demonstrate that you are a suitable person and have the suitable personal attributes for the course you're applying for. Tell us about any achievements you're proud of, any positions of responsibility. Maybe you're involved in a student society or club at school. Tell us about the skills you've gained from that in terms of time management or what else. And that again shows you as a person. It's personal to you, it's unique to you. So I just wanted to share this slide, and I think these slides will be shared after today's session, but this might be quite a useful framework to use when you come to sit down and plan out your personal statement. So think about, firstly, why you're applying for the course, what about the course really interests you, and see where you can link this to your own experiences and achievements, either from your school, well, both from your schoolwork and from supercurricular activity. Think about the skills and qualities you've developed from your time at school, from your extracurricular activities and so on, and how that links and demonstrates you have the personal attributes that we're looking for in candidates for the courses that you're applying for. But keep it focused and selective. So my top tips to summarize would be, if we can go on to the next slide, please. Showcase your own voice. Don't think you need to try and sound clever by including quotations. We want to hear what you have to say. But if you're going to tell us that you're interested in something, you need to provide that evidence. So evidence it with links to what you've done at school, but also to that supercurricular engagement. So your wider reading and your wider exploration of the course you're applying for. But be selective with your examples. You only have about 4,000 characters. That's not a lot. And unfortunately, you're probably not going to be able to include absolutely everything that you've done and achieved. So be selective. Think about which examples really clearly demonstrate that passion and genuine interest for the course you've applied for, and demonstrate that you've done that research as well. Develop your ideas. Don't just tell us, I did this free online course in an introduction to cognitive psychology at the University of York. Fantastic, that's great. Great that you've done that. But what have you learned from that experience? So develop those ideas. And again, if you can, link it to the course you're applying for. That shows you've done your research. And get feedback and redraft. You probably are wondering why Pikachu is on this slide, Detective Pikachu, but my sort of take and advice on drafting and redrafting personal statements is almost read it as if you're a detective. And if you said something that you haven't substantiated, if you haven't provided evidence of that, then either cut it out or make sure you've got the evidence. So don't just say throwaway statements or cliches. You need to evidence and give examples and develop ideas to really make your personal statement stand out and be more competitive. So thank you for listening to that. Hopefully that's given you some food for thought on how you might approach your personal statement and what we're looking for. So I'd like to hand over to Tom from the University of Warwick, who's going to give some examples, and keep these top tips in mind when we go through those examples as well, and how you might approach your personal statement. So thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you very much, Grace. That was fascinating. I'm just going to share a different screen if I can. Just check if this is working. Can I just double check that people can see?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Tom Parker and I'm from the University of Warwick. I'm going to mainly be concentrating on giving some examples because the information that Emma and Grace provided is actually really valuable. And I want you to kind of think about some of those ideas. I'm going to provide some examples of real life personal statements that we've received at Warwick, and get you to try to think about which are better and why, based on the kinds of ideas that we've been putting forward in the presentation so far. In order to do that, I would like you, if you can, to go to that website on screen. You don't have to sign up or give a username or anything like that. You can just use my username, which is there. So the website is pollevy.com/TomParker314. So if you go there, if I go to the next screen, I believe you should be able to you should be able to sort of give a one-word response in terms of what you think about when you think about the UCAS application process. So just an adjective really we're looking for, and you can see the website again at the top of that screen as well. So you can do that on your phone or on your laptop or whatever device you're using. Let's see if that works first of all. I'm just going to test it out. Long. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Is this working for anybody else? I'll give it a couple more minutes just to see. Not sure what that means, but daunting. That's a good one. Daunting. Tough. Yeah, these are tedious. Oh, painful. Yeah, it can be, but it's also, it can be very interesting because it's a chance for you to really think about what you have learned during school and how you can apply that to your application. So all of these are sort of yeah, confusing, can be scary. All right, good. This was really just to get an idea of whether this poll was working, because it's for later really. So what I want you to think about in terms of the personal statement, I want you to remember that admissions officers read a lot of personal statements. Okay, so, and I sit next to them in normal non-COVID times, I sit next to them in the office. I've never seen them do that, I have to say, but I do see them with their faces, their palms in their faces sometimes. So in order to avoid some of the pitfalls, I'm going to give some top tips, kind of 4 golden rules. Grace covered a lot of it, but really it's just to reiterate the point. So the first is show, don't tell. So what I mean by this is kind of a classic example would be I'm passionate about. So rather than just saying I'm passionate about law or economics or whatever it is, instead think about, demonstrating that passion rather than just saying you're passionate. What have you done or what have you read that demonstrates that passion, and what have you learned from it? Be reflective. I won't go into too much details because Grace kind of covered this already, but it's really important that you evidence everything that you say. Don't just say things, don't just tell us things, show us how, demonstrate it. Secondly, analyze, don't describe. So don't just give brief synopses of books or articles that you've read. So instead, think about being much more specific. So think about specific issues or theories or debates that you come across or topics within a broader subject, and evidence it through specific extracts from books or journal articles or publications that you've read. So, be specific, but also really importantly, be reflective and demonstrate critical engagement. So Grace kind of covered this already, but it's really important that you evidence everything that you talk about. So don't just say, I read such and such, the author argues this or that. That's just description really. So what have you learned from the reading that you've done? How has it developed your understanding of the broader subject? Or where did that take you next? What did you then read, and how did that then develop your understanding of the subject? So it's that kind of level of critical engagement with the subject material that we're looking for. And that sort of level of reflection is really super important. Thirdly, show genuine wider interest in the subject. And again, this has kind of been covered, but I just want to reiterate the point. Don't just rely on what you read in the classroom at school, or books that were recommended to you by your teachers. I'm not for a second suggesting not to read or not to use books as a resource, because they're incredibly valuable. But I would just wanted to sort of reiterate the point that there are many resources nowadays that you can access to demonstrate your passion for the subject and to demonstrate your wider interest in that subject. So again, things like podcasts that you might have listened to, YouTube videos, even documentaries that you've watched or listened to, online articles, MOOCs. You know, these are all, as long as they're semi-academic, or as long as you are engaging with the material in an analytical way, these are all valuable resources for demonstrating that wider interest in the subject. So it doesn't all have to just come from a list of books that you claim to have read. And then finally, be careful what you say. So a couple of examples here. That first one, VE Day in 1947 heralded the end of the Second World War. So if you're applying to history, or any subject for that matter, I hope you would realize that the Second World War ended in 1945. So if you reference 1947, that is not going to go down at all well. It may well be, and I would imagine this is probably just a typo, but really what this goes to show is the importance of drafting and redrafting. And for each draft that you do, it's really important that you get somebody else to proofread it, because it's really important to get a fresh set of eyes on the personal statement that you've written. Because believe me, when you've spent so long on a piece of writing, you can become blind to some fairly glaring errors. It happens all the time, so just be careful about that. And then finally, just to mention one other thing, because this is called a personal statement, but if you are also thinking of applying to another country, for example, the US, there's a very different understanding of what personal means. So personal in the personal statement of the UK system does not mean what's your story. We're not really, of course, we're interested in you as a person, but we're really interested in you as a person in terms of how you engage with the academic material, with the academic subject. That's what we mean by personal in the UK. So it's very different to the US system, where because you're not applying to a specific subject, they're looking more at your personality and the things that you've done and what that says about you as a person. And really, that's not what we're looking for in the UK. In the UK, personal means, you know, your personal motivation to study the program that you're applying to. And again, as has already been stated by Emma and Grace, it's really important that you use specific, unique, personal examples to evidence and demonstrate your passion for the subject, your interest in the subject. So that is really what personal means in the personal statement in the UK. Okay, so the main part that I wanted to do today was to talk about some examples. And I'm going to use 4 typical areas that you would perhaps talk about on the personal statement. So these will be wider reading, work experience, school subjects, and extracurricular activities. So I'll give 2 or 3 examples for each. And I will just say these are real examples. They've been anonymized, obviously, but these are genuine examples of people that applied to Warwick. And these are for subjects that mostly you're looking at 3 A's in A level. So these are smart students, okay? So none of the examples is bad, but some of them are better than others. So I want you to read them and think about why. And get ready with that Poll EV website as well, because I'm going to get you to vote as well. Okay, so firstly, wider reading. There are 3 examples for this. So example 1, I regularly read The Economist and explore various other works, including the popular Freakonomics and 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism. Secondly, I keep abreast of current affairs through reading journals such as whatever. Its report in such and such edition inspired me to write an essay submitted to an essay competition, considering problems and solutions to the Eurozone crisis. And finally, wanting to better understand the dynamics of brick economies, I came across such and such's article. It challenged my presumption that simply gifting cheap grain to developing economies is enough to lift them from poverty. Okay, so, and I promise not all of the examples are going to be economics. But with these three examples, thinking about what I've just said, thinking about what Grace and Emma talked about, all of the ideas we've put forward this morning and in this evening, including your own concept of what a personal statement means, which of these examples do you think is better and why? And I will just open that up to the poll, and I'll give that a couple of minutes to see if that's working. Okay, someone's straight in there with 2 and 3. Second, I'll put them back on in the screen just in case you want to read them again. And when I go back, I'll check what the final scores are in the poll. And if anybody's feeling very brave, you're very welcome to unmute yourself and tell me which of these you think is better and why. Is anybody feeling brave? Because otherwise I'm just going to tell you my opinion. Does anybody want to offer their thoughts?
Tom, we also have some responses coming in the chat, and we've got Alifia is saying 3, Johanna is saying 3, and Nabiha and Aisha are saying 2. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and that kind of chimes with the poll results. I can't see that because I've got my full screen on. But I don't know if people are able to unmute themselves in this session, Saima, or not. But I just was interested to see if anybody wanted to offer an opinion as to which one they prefer and why.
Yes, they can unmute themselves now.
Anybody feeling brave?
Hi, can I give it a try?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
absolutely.
So I think example 3 is better because the student is firstly talking about what his subject or what he's talking like the BRICS economies, and then he's explaining why he read the article and how it changed his opinion on it. So he's also talking about how the article impacted him and how it impacted his thoughts on it, and how those thoughts changed because of the article he read on the subject he's interested in.
Brilliant. Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. I think that's a really good explanation. I agree entirely. I think the third one is the best of the three for exactly those reasons. So obviously it demonstrates wider reading. It's quite specific article, so it's being more specific. But I think most importantly, which is what you touched upon, is it says, you know, it challenged my presumption. So it talks about the learning that they gained from the reading that they did. So it's not just listing things, they talk about what they learned from it. And it's that level of reflection and that critical engagement with the academic material, that is what the top universities are looking for. That's great. Perfect. Does anybody want to, because nobody really went for the first one. Does anybody want to tell me what's wrong with the first one if they didn't like it?
Can I try? So
you can, yeah, okay.
So I think in the first one, they've just stated what they did, but they didn't say what they learned from it or how it impacted them or how it intrigued their interest in the subject or anything in that sort. So it's just what they did. So like, you don't know, like anyone can just read the book, but what did you gain? What's your personal experience from reading the popular Freakonomics or 13 things they didn't tell about capitalism? So
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that again. I think that's summed it up very well. So I think Grace talked about this actually in terms of don't just list things. You know, a personal statement is not just a catalogue of achievements or a list of things that you've done or a list of things that you've read. You need to evidence everything that you talk about. So I would also say, I mean, this is not the main problem with this first example. And I have a subscription to The Economist, so I'm not knocking The Economist at all. It's a fantastic publication. The other two sources are perhaps not the most in-depth or academic sources, but that's not necessarily the main problem. It's simply that they don't really engage with the material or tell us what they learned from it. And that's really the main problem. Okay, I'm gonna move to the second example. There are two this time for work experience. So firstly, being involved in busy law firms, as well as administrative tasks, I was also able to research areas of the law for clients. In researching conveyance laws, I enjoyed the opportunity to apply the law in logical ways to various situations. And secondly, I've undertaken internships at Eversheds, PwC, and such family law and solicitors, where I gained valuable work experience and skills, which confirmed my aspiration to be a commercial lawyer. Okay, so I will open that again and tell me which you think is better and why, based on everything we've talked about so far. Straight in there with the number 1, a few for 2. I'll put them back on the screen so you can see. And again, if anybody else is feeling brave, I appreciated Ishan's responses before, and they were very, very insightful. But if anybody else has opinions, please feel free to unmute yourself and tell me which you think is better and why.
I would like to speak.
Sure, please do.
So when I read work experience 1, the student talks about how he understood what is in the subject he chose and what he learned from doing research on a specific subject. And he even mentioned the interest aspect and why he enjoys such an opportunity and how it helped him apply certain things, to do certain things in a logical way and to apply it to various other situations. So that is a way better experience than experience 2.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree with that again. I definitely think the first one is better. I think neither of these examples is perfect, if I'm honest, but I do think for the reasons you just highlighted, Joanna, I think the first one is better. It shows a, more of a level of reflection. It talks about the sort of skills that they've sort of newly acquired skills that they've acquired and utilized. Gives specific examples of the law. If you really read it in more detail, there's a slight generic element to some aspects of it, so it's not perfect, but it definitely engages more and is more reflective in terms of what they've learned from the experience or the skills that it's given them. The second example, going back to this idea of not just listing things and a personal statement, not just being a catalogue of achievements. The second example is a perfect example of this. Because the second example, I mean, if you look at the actual work experience this person has, I mean, presumably they are, 17, 18 years old. To have that kind of work experience is incredible. It's really, really impressive. And yet they don't really tell us what they've gained from that experience. Yes, they say, I gained valuable work experience and skills, but, what experience, which skills? They don't go into it, they don't evidence it. It goes back to what Grace was saying about, you have to substantiate everything. So this is a really good example of, not giving that evidence, and it can be really your downfall, because this experience was actually incredible, and yet they don't really utilize it. Okay, third example. So school subjects, 2 examples again. My studies in A-level maths encouraged me to explore how techniques such as calculus and matrices may be applied to economic problems, and to discover more about this field, I read such and such. My favorite subject has been maths, which is incredibly challenging. I enjoy the problem-solving style of algebra and calculus, relishing the opportunity to work logically with numbers. Okay, so again, I'll open that up to the poll, and you can tell me which of these you think is better and why. Okay, so people going for 1 so far. I'll put them back on screen. So again, is anybody feeling brave, wants to tell me which they prefer and why?
Hello. So I definitely feel that the first example is much better, because they've actually shown how it's this subject they've been inspired to study more, and they've taken that growth and applied it to another field that they might have been interested in. So that's why I feel like they're searching for that, they're growing and learning more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100% again with that. It demonstrates sort of critical engagement. As you mentioned, it tries to link maths with another area. Perhaps this person's applying for economics. There's evidence of wider reading, which, almost by definition shows a genuine interest in the subject. So yeah, a much greater level of critical engagement with the subject. The second one, the second one, I mean, when I do these presentations, sometimes I talk about avoiding being generic, avoid generalized, vague statements. And for me, the second is an example of this. So the second one, when you read it, it sounds quite nice actually, but actually when you really read it and you really get into it, what is it actually saying? I mean, the second one really could apply to anybody studying maths. It doesn't tell us anything about the student themselves or how they personally engage with maths as a subject. So it's very bland, very generic, and this is the kind of thing you want to be avoiding. Okay. Lastly, and there are 3 examples this time for extracurricular activities. I've been a member of a judo club for 6 years, receiving my first black belt last year. I greatly enjoyed the training sessions every week. Chess has developed my analytical skills and has trained me to cope with high pressure situations. As a member of the rugby team, I was intrigued by such and such's game theory analysis, which concluded that the problem of drug taking in sport has more to do with the regulators who allow the prisoner's dilemma to proliferate than the athletes themselves. Okay, a bit of a mouthful, that last one, so I'll give you a moment to read through it. And again, I'll open this up. Which of those do you think is better and why? Okay, second one, like in the second one. Third one, nobody for the first. Okay, it's slightly surprising results in my opinion, but I'll open them back up. Okay, so lastly, last chance. Does anybody want to speak out and tell me which they prefer and why? No takers? Anyone? Okay, I'll put them back on just to check where we're at. Okay, so if nobody's going to offer their opinion, I shall give mine.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Yes. So I think the third example is really good because he's linking his extracurricular activity to his subject interest and how a specific he's like used game theory analysis and linked it to rugby and how that specific he's spoken about a specific example and how that impacts the game and how he used that information he knows about his subject interest into his sports interest. So that's linking two aspects that he's the student is interested in. So I think the third example is like very good, and even the second one, I also think that over there when they're talking about chess and how how this chess helped them to develop certain key skills that might be useful. But again, that's not linking it to the it's not linking it to their subject interest, like what they want to take. So maybe I would say the third one is just a little better than the second one for that reason. And
Okay. Yeah, that's
and the
great.
first one,
Yep.
and for the first one, I would say like extracurricular one, I think that's not very useful because they've just given basic information of going to a judo club and getting a black belt and enjoying it. Like there's no learning or takeaway or any personal experience or even linking it to their subject interest. So I think, there's not much in that one. So
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. You should just you could just do my job for me. I agree totally with all of those things that you mentioned. It's really, really insightful actually. For me, I think that the third one is I think the second two are both very good in their own ways. I will just mention one thing that didn't come up in the previous talks, and that's something we call like the ABC rule. So it's activity, benefit, course. So what activity have you done? How has it benefited you? What skills has it given you or experience has it given you? What have you learned from it? And how is that going to help you on the course? And how can you link it to the course? And I think that's a really good rule to use, particularly for extracurricular activities. And that's exactly what they do in the second and third in very different ways. So the third, as you say, Grace mentioned earlier about ballet, linking it to French, and it was a bit cheeky. And you can do that. You can find ways to link things to the subject in different ways, and that's what they do here. Because actually, of the 3 activities, perhaps being on the rugby team is the least impressive, and yet out of that, they've managed to link it to wider reading, to specific theories within the subject, to what they've learned. You know, so they're ticking a lot of boxes, whilst ostensibly talking about being on a rugby team. Is really impressive. And then the second, as you say, it does do that sort of ABC rule, because it talks about the activity, talks about the skills they gain from it, and how that will help them on the course. And then and they've done it in a very succinct way. So in its own way, that's really good, given you only have 4,000 characters to play with. And then the first one, as you say, the activity is pretty impressive. It can be to be a black belt at the age of what, 17, 18, but they don't develop it. You know, you could talk about, you know, the level of focus that it requires, or the dedication, and these are personal attributes that will definitely help you studying an undergraduate degree at university, but they don't say any of that. So actually it's a bit of a waste of wordage. Okay, brilliant. Some fantastic responses there. And that is the end of my presentation. So I'll stop sharing my screen and come back to the main group. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed the activities. And I'm just going to go to our ending slides now. Just quickly flip through your screen slides. Actually, just stop share for a moment. Are there any questions just before we end? So we'll all, Tom, Emma, Grace, and myself will be happy to take questions. And also, I just like to add here, with all the excellent examples that Tom has shown, and the quiz that Emma did, and all the detail that Grace provided you, I'm sure you're all really well equipped now to write your own personal statements and to, you know, sort of have a great UCAS application. At STEPS, we do provide free personal statement support to students who are applying to our partner universities. So if you would like us to have a look at your personal statement, please feel free to get in touch. You've all got our contact details. Apart from personal statement review and guidance, we also provide all these services for students who are applying to our partner universities. So again, feel free to get in touch with us and we'd be more than happy to help. So if you have any questions, please do unmute your mics and or type them in the chat box, and we'll be keeping an eye over there. So I'll give you all a few minutes to come up with your questions. Does anybody have any burning questions? Let's see if we have something in the chat box. What if one plans to start undergrad after AS level? Would that be recommended? If we do a foundation year, of course. Yes, generally after your AS level, you would be doing a foundation course. Would any of you like to take that? Emma, Grace, or Tom? Could you hear me?
Sorry, I think we're all being very English and waiting for the other person to speak.
Right. Tom, would you like to take that?
Sorry, what was the question? It was about whether to do foundation.
About the foundation program. So can they start an undergraduate degree after the AS level, or should they apply for the foundation program, for a foundation?
I mean, I'll speak on behalf of Warwick principally, but obviously at Warwick, if you only have done AS levels, then you would need to do a foundation course. We do offer foundation courses in-house, and there are various pathways that you can take, and you're given a guaranteed conditional offer to continue at Warwick, and many students do, or else they go to other Russell Group universities, and Warwick's foundation programs are accepted by all universities in the UK, including all the top universities such as Warwick. So yeah, I mean, it depends a lot. There are factors such as finances to consider. I mean, for me personally, if I were in that position, I would probably want to continue to finish my A levels and then go direct in country and then go directly to an undergraduate degree, because you're going to save an entire year of overseas fees. But it's really up to the person and whether that's something they want to consider. But both are an option in the UK.
And can I also add that we will be doing, STEPS will be hosting a Warwick Foundation program seminar or webinar on the 9th of December. So we will send you details of that. We've got your email address. Also keep an eye on our social media for registration. Grace, would you like to sort of talk and sort of say anything about AS level and entry at York?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Tom had to say there, that that is a viable route to an undergraduate programme in the UK. Similarly to Warwick, the University of York does have a foundation programme through our International Pathway College that would then give entry onto an undergraduate programme. The question specifically asked whether it's sort of recommended or not. I wouldn't say that it's recommended. It really comes down to the personal choice of the individual student, as Tom was mentioning there, because there's other factors to consider, such as the finance for that foundation year, where you could sort of remain and do your full A levels and then just apply for that directly for the full undergraduate. But if you, just in short, if you finished with your AS levels and then wanted to undertake an undergraduate program, you would have to do the foundation course unless you continued with your A levels.
And Emma, would that be the same for Nottingham?
Yeah, that would be the same for Nottingham. And I'd reiterate what Grace and Thomas said as well about the other issues with doing a foundation course and the money that's involved in that as well. So whether it's worth staying and completing your A levels here. Similarly, if you don't quite get the A level results that the university needs, then for Nottingham, I'm sure it'll be the same for Warwick and York. You can come and do the foundation year as well. So even if you don't quite make it in your A levels, you can still come and do a foundation program.
I think at Warwick you couldn't. At Warwick, if you've done your A levels, you could not apply to the foundation program.
Yeah, I would just add at Warwick, the foundation is really designed for those students who have 12 years of education. It's really that bridge, because obviously in the UK, if you're doing A levels, you study 13 years of education. Whereas if you're, at a Pakistani high school or lots of countries around the world that only do 12 years, that's really principally what it's designed for, is to act as that bridge between that 12th and 13th year to prepare you for your undergraduate studies. So at Warwick, we don't really encourage, or we don't really have as an option doing the foundation if you just didn't do well enough in your full A levels.
Yeah, so you would have to then make that choice at AS level if you were applying to Warwick. But for York or Nottingham, you could proceed till A levels and then make that decision based on your grades. And of course, we can tell you more about that on the 8th of December. So we have some other questions related to the personal statement. So I'll just sort of take the ones that we got first. So Mariam is asking, should we mention why we want to apply to the UK in our statement? Who would like to, shall I nominate?
I'm happy to take that one. So I think you don't really need to tell us why you want to apply to the UK, because we already will be able to tell that you want to apply to the UK because you're applying to us. I think, and it's certainly not something that would be expected within your personal statement. As we've mentioned, you've only got about 4,000 characters to use, so that's limited. We'd much prefer to see that you talk about your interest in the course you're applying for. So unless it was in any way relevant to your subject interest and why you're wanting to study that course at the universities you've applied to within the UK. So say, for instance, maybe because if you want to apply for law, it might be because you're interested in the UK legal system in particular, then by all means mention that. But I think if you're going to talk about why you want to study and apply to the UK, it has to be linked to the course. Otherwise, it's irrelevant really for us. that would be my take on that question. I don't know if Tom and Emma have anything they would maybe agree or disagree with on that.
No, I completely agree as well. And I think, as we've mentioned quite a lot throughout the presentation, you are very limited with the words that you have, and it's definitely not the most important thing to talk about as part of your personal statement.
Right.
I would echo what's been said, really, and then just to mention, if you're applying to several countries, you don't need to specify that because obviously you apply to that country, so we don't know that you're applying to other countries, and we don't need to know that, and you don't need to mention why you're applying to the UK. But what you do need to do is make sure that your personal statement is relevant and specific to the country that you're applying to. And I sort of referenced it slightly earlier in terms of the very distinct differences between the personal statement in the UK and the personal essay that you write in the US, because it's a totally different approach. So you just need to make sure that you're using the right approach for the country that you're applying to.
So Ashmal is asking, so if I describe how I got into actually being interested in the course I'm applying for, I don't really need to use book references to explain that, rather than use my own actual story. Would that be fine? So using their own actual story as opposed to adding any academic references to that or any relevant reading to that. Tom, would you like to take that?
Didn't quite follow the logic with that. I probably need to read it. Does anybody else want to have a go at it while I read it for myself?
Yeah. Emma, would you like to take that? So basically, if they actually explained why they're interested in the course, do they still need to give any academic relevance?
I think it's important to be backing up what you're saying with evidence. So ideally that will be academic based evidence, but if there's something else that you've done that you can back up what you're stating with, then that should be fine, as long as it's kind of experience based, or there is something you can use as an example. I think just be wary of what both Grace and Tom have pointed out throughout the presentation, which is just making a point or making a statement and not really backing it up with any firm evidence as to why that statement is correct for you.
Right, thank you. Muhammad Zaid is asking, so briefly, the personal statement is about the selection of course in which we are interested in and the extracurricular activities that we have performed linking to the course. Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely correct, Zaid. Alifia is asking, we won't have to do a foundation year if we complete 2 years of our A-levels, regardless of the course. Yes, if you've got two years of if you've got your A-level qualifications completed, then you will not need to do the foundation year. That is the school leaving qualification that universities in the UK will want. Nabiha is asking, where can I give you my email address so I can be notified for such webinars? You've already registered for this webinar, and you will now be sent information about any subsequent webinars. You can note it down in the chat box or send it to us privately, Nabiha, as well. You can send it to Aisha or Rida, who are participants in this group, or to myself. Lubna Shaukat is asking, what is the difficulty level of the foundation year as the students take it as an easy way to get into the university? I think it would depend on different foundation years. So, and again, I don't know who would want to take that, because I think the Warwick foundation year is different to the Nottingham and York foundation years. And they are challenging programs. I think all three are pretty challenging programs. Grace, would you like to take that?
Thanks, Saima. I think really it depends on the foundation year you're going for, sort of as you mentioned, and if you're looking at a foundation year, make sure it's one that's eligible for the sort of university you want to go for later on. I think Tom described it really well earlier when he described it as kind of bridging that gap between, say, between 12th and 13th grade from your AS and A level, and also say if you've completed your A levels but didn't quite get the grades you wanted and you wouldn't be able to go for the university that you would ideally like to, then it can also be a bit of a leveling up exercise. But I don't think I would describe it as an easy route or an easy path into university. It is very much more about bridging that gap or that leveling up where required. But I think the key thing is make sure if you do go for a foundation course that it will actually give you that path to the university you want to go for, because the last thing you want to do is do a foundation year, commit to that, and then realize the university you want to go for and do the course you actually want won't accept that foundation year, and that would be a real shame. So that would be the key thing I'd mention there.
Thank you, Grace. Ashmal is asking, similar to what Zaid had asked, so when describing how I actually got interested in my particular course that I'm applying for, I don't really need book references to explain. Rather, using my actual story would be more appreciated. Yes, you could use your actual story to show how you got interested, but then once you are interested, and obviously you need to then evidence that by backing that up with some further reading, if you are interested, as Emma previously said in response to Zaid's query as well. Alicia is asking, should we mention, we've already covered that. Fateh, your query is about PhD English literature in these universities, and we've made a note of that, and we will get in touch with you with guidance and relevant links to guide you towards the PhD English literature departments and guidelines for how to apply for a PhD, because the process is very different than an undergraduate application. Kashmala is asking, how important or significant are O-level grades generally when applying to Russell Group universities? Who would like to take that?
I think for Nottingham, it depends a little bit on the course. So for some courses, you will have specific requirements for your O-level grades as well. And it's definitely worth noting the different requirements. As Grace said, just do your research and make sure you know what the grade requirements are, but also subject requirements as well. And if they have O-level subject requirements as part of that, that would be my advice.
Thank you. Yes, it would vary from subject to subject. Some subjects, of course, would have specific O-level requirements. Specifically for math, I know that some subjects will ask for particular grades in maths. So it is important to look at specific O-level requirements. And otherwise, of course, universities would, these three universities would ask for, obviously, a good O-level grades and high O-level grades. Alifia is asking, if we are applying for arts, we have to submit a portfolio which holds much weightage. Can we still be rejected on the basis of a personal statement? Would anybody like to get that if they've got progress?
Yeah, we have architecture, which requires a portfolio as part of the application process. And yes, you could still be rejected based on your personal statement if maybe things didn't quite match in what you were saying, or there were things that we were concerned about in your personal statement, or you didn't quite sell kind of why you wanted to do a subject. So I would say one doesn't cancel out the other. They're definitely ranked sort of separately in terms of the admissions process. So you'd need to kind of get good feedback on both from the admissions tutor.
Kishmala is asking, can you include a certain event in your life that inspired you to study a certain subject in your personal statement? Grace, would you like to get that one?
Yes, of course, if you're happy to share that information. Do recognise that obviously whatever you disclose in that personal statement is being seen by 5 UK university admissions departments. If it's something that's been quite sort of transformative and has made you want to study a certain subject, then by all means that can be a good place to start, but that in itself isn't sufficient. So you will still need to back up with, as we've mentioned, evidence and examples of what you've done to take responsibility for your own learning and your own exploration of that subject, because that's really what sets you apart and demonstrates that key subject interest. So by all means, that's a good starting point, but I wouldn't say that that would be sufficient in and of itself.
Thank you, Grace. Mohammed Zaid is asking, the personal statement can be written to any 5 universities in the UK in which we are interested in. Yes, on the UCAS form, you apply to 5 universities and you can choose any 5 universities that you're interested in. Does anybody like, Tom, would you like to add to that?
No, I mean, yes, I mean, that it's a simple answer. You apply to 5 universities and you write one personal statement and it goes to all 5. I guess there's a kind of balancing act that you need to deal with in terms of obviously with one personal statement going to 5 universities, you can't be so specific as to be clearly targeting one university, and you can't be so general as to be bland and generic. So there is a balancing act, but I think, as long as you're doing the sort of the things that we talked about today in terms of substantiating and evidencing everything that you mention, and showing a level of reflection and being critically engaging with the subject, as long as you're sort of doing those things, I don't think you can go too far wrong.
Grace, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that UK universities don't see the other 4 universities you've applied to, so you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, as Tom said, don't say I really want to study at X university because it's also being seen by 4 other universities, and that will be quite awkward for you. So don't do that. I've seen that happen before, so be careful with that.
And if I can add to that, also don't write, if you're applying to Nottingham, Warwick, or York, don't mention in your personal statement specifically that it's been your dream to go and study in London, because neither of these universities are in London, and I've seen that happening a lot. So just be very, and also as Grace said, because the other 4 universities don't see who you've applied to, it really doesn't matter, and also it really doesn't matter what order you list the universities on your form, because again, they're not really seeing them, the other universities.
Yeah. Sorry, just to add to that, I've seen an example. It wasn't actually on a personal statement, but it was a prospective applicant emailed one university saying, I really want to study at this university. Didn't mention the university in their email, but didn't blind copy and sent the exact same email to lots of other universities as well. So don't trip up on that sort of thing.
Yeah. Fateh is asking, please explain that a personal statement should be composed on so many pages. I'm not sure, Fateh, what you mean by that. It has a 4,000 character limit. So it really can't go beyond that. It can't go on to multiple pages, really. If perhaps I misunderstood, maybe you could sort of explain. Alithia is asking, does using quotes or anything, any quotations, does that count in the 10% of plagiarism?
No, so you need to be clear that you were quoting. So what might happen is it might be flagged in the copy catch, like I mentioned. But as I said, then someone will go through and read what you've written and make sure that if it's a quote, then that's fine as well. So just make sure it's clearly a quote, and then you'll be fine.
And Emma, is there a tool on the UCAS website where students can themselves do a plagiarism check or a copy catch?
That's a good question. There's definitely a place on the website where you can find more about plagiarism and get a bit more information from UCAS and how copy catch works. They might also help sort of with scanning things and checking things as well. I'm not 100% sure, but there's definitely more information on the UCAS website.
I'll have a check and figure it out. Right, thank you. If there are no more questions, is the word limit strictly 4,000 characters? Can one go over? No, it is strictly 4,000 characters. So you have, or am I wrong?
No, it's strictly 4,000 characters. And I think this also might relate back to Fateh's question in composing it over so many pages. Actually, another tip to bear in mind is draft your personal statement outside of UCAS on something like Google Docs or Word document, and then copy it over. Obviously, then make sure you've reread and had your personal statement proofread by someone else on UCAS before you submit it. But it's a good way to just sort of draft in a different document, because to make sure that you don't lose work and so on. So I would recommend doing that as well.
Yeah, so when I'm helping students with their personal statements, I often ask them to share a Google Doc with me, because that way we can actually sort of edit it together, and I can show them what changes I've made, or they can track them and obviously review the word limit with it as well. And I've got students here who I'm helping already with this. So feel free to get in touch if you'd like me to go over your personal statement, provided you're applying to one of these 3 universities. And if you're not, even then we can then sort of see how we can help you. And how can you reach out to us? We've got our all our contact details at the bottom of the slide. So you can email us or get in touch with us on Facebook or Instagram, or go to on our website and fill out a form. Our email is info@stepsedu.org. And if you'd like to email me directly, you can email me at Saima, SAIMA, @stepsedu.org. We will be sending you a copy of this presentation, and as well as some useful links. So all those who registered and who attended this webinar will be getting a copy of this presentation and our contact details as well. So if there are no more questions, I'll say thank you to Emma, Grace, and Tom. And of course, if you want to reach out to either Emma, Grace, or Tom directly, feel free to, again, email us, and we will forward your email directly. We will connect you to them as well. Is our visa still sponsored if we go for diploma courses? What is the procedure and fee for extra help in the personal statement area? You could just send these queries to us on email, and we will be happy to guide you further on these as well. So it would depend on the program that you're going to, and again, on which universities you're applying to if you need additional support for your personal statement. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Tom. It was really nice to do this, and I'm so glad that the students found this helpful, and I really enjoyed myself.
Thank you very much for facilitating this session, and thanks to everybody for joining, and I hope you found it useful, and good luck with your applications when you start them.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks Saima and the team at StepsEdu, and thank you everyone for joining this evening as well. It's been a real pleasure, and great to work with you, Tom and Emma, on this as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Any more questions, please just drop them on our email, and we'd be happy to respond tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.